Welcome to Sigest, your fortnightly serving of digestible science from plant and food research.
Kia ora koutou, and welcome to another episode of Sigest. I'm your host Tom Moore, and today we're talking to Dr. Mette Nielsen about her journey in science to date and the tips and thrips she has along the way. So Mette, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So first things first, what do you do at Plant and Food, and how long have you been here for?
So I'm a senior scientist in the entomology team here at Lincoln, and I've been here for a lot of years.
Sorry, how many years was that exactly?
So permanent, I say 16 or 17 years, but I came here first in 2004 to get some work experience. Basically, I've started my master's, but I wanted some work experience before finishing it, and so I came here to work for a year. I work mainly on thrips, but our group is quite focused on small insect vectors, so thrips and psyllids, and whiteflies, aphids, anything that transmit viruses or diseases, bacteria, stuff into plants.
Okay, what's a psyllid?
A psyllid, it's a little plant hopper. They are quite, our main concern with them is on potatoes. So they transmit bacteria into potatoes, which means that when you fry up your oven chips, they go all brown and not very nice.
Well, that's very good.
Yeah.
So going right back to the start, was there like an origin point at some point that you knew you'd like to be a scientist and it drove your journey into sort of going down that path? Or was it very serendipitous along the way?
It was definitely not a planned journey. I always liked biology. Always thought that was quite a cool science to have. Never really thought that was going to be my journey. But yeah, I ended up going to university and got introduced to two things. One was aid work and helping farmers in developing countries, which I thought was amazing work. And the other was a very enigmatic and charismatic entomology teacher in my first year, and I just thought it was fascinating. And I actually remember one of the tests we had was to find the thrip species in a sample, and I thought, Jesus, who works with something that small? And the fact that that's became what I did mainly is quite...
It's amazing the kind of people you pick up along the way. And how would someone be charismatic about thrips?
He was just so enthusiastic about his field and so enthusiastic about helping. Like we worked a lot on, like, instead of spraying, like how can you control these pests and insects that are causing so much loss in food production, for example. And yeah, he was just so passionate about it. It was, a bit disorganized as a supervisor. He was not my favorite choice to be had. But yeah, his enthusiasm was just. It was just amazing. I never thought I was go into something like that. After that first year, I was like, that's exactly what I want to do.
Cool. And where was that exactly? That wasn't in New Zealand?
No, so I started my university career doing pure biology at the University of Roskilde, which is just outside of Copenhagen. And it wasn't for me. The whole structure of that university is quite different to a normal university. I learned a lot about writing projects, which was great, but the way they kind of ran the university, I thought I will never hire anybody from here. That was basically how I ended up. And so I wanted to change direction. And because I just had that introduction at that university about aid work and stuff, we did a project on it, and I thought, this is amazing. And my friend was already studying agronomy at what was then the Royal Agricultural University of Copenhagen. She said, come over to us and study here. And so I applied and got in, and then changed to that school instead. And yeah.
Sounds like a good move.
It was like everything was so much better. If nothing else, I had a 45-minute train journey, and now I could bike. So that was always great.
Yeah, it was always better to upgrade the transport mode.
Yeah.
The aid work you mentioned, what was that specifically?
So the first one was it was about farmers in Africa, farmers who lived on the border of the national parks. And it was about a good intention that went very bad. So they would put in fences with solar power to keep like elephants and stuff out so they didn't actually damage the crop. But because nothing was communicated to the farmers, they looked at it as them being stopped from having access to the parks. So that was one thing where I thought, oh, that's actually quite an interesting way of doing it.
Oh, so there was like a really big electric fence around the...
Yeah, to protect them from, because they were not overcrowding the parks, but it was an issue with them coming in and destroying the crops. And so to, help the farmers, but the farmers saw it very differently because I was never communicated to them. Another one we had was about, they wanted to empower women in a village. So they set up like a chicken production so they could sell these, because the women were responsible for all the costs for the children, for example. So they set up these chickens, they could produce meat and sell the eggs and stuff, and that created a whole host of social inequality, problems in that, because the men were threatened, so the violence went up. It was a very interesting dynamic. And at my second university, one of the first things we had in entomology was they showed us work done in, I think it was somewhere in Latin America. And I just remember, he put up one picture, this is the same entomologist, he was just put up one picture, and I remember that it like it was yesterday, this guy standing in his field, basically in shorts, with a bowl with a white powder, would turn out to be an insecticide, and a feather duster. And he was basically sold this to try to save his crop for money he didn't have, and he was sold what was most likely a systemic insecticide that does not go on with a feather duster. No protective gear, no nothing. Basically, he's putting... And I just thought it was I thought, man, that is so wrong on so many levels, right? And I thought, man, if we could help with that, that would be fantastic. And that's... So, yeah, I never forgot that.
So it sounds to me like the driver may not have been the intrinsic ecology of the thrips that really sort of grabbed your attention initially. It was the politics around how to protect farming.
The politics was definitely, and then when I had the overlaying of the zoology courses and stuff, I was like, okay, it's definitely what I want to do. I was then told that I had to wait to actually do some work in the fields. I was in my 50s because I didn't send women till then. I don't know if that's changed, but I am involved today with a project in Myanmar that is an MFAT project that I really enjoy, about building some resilience for their farmers and helping them. So seems to have come full circle, which is great.
That's great to sort of continue on the story of doing aid. The Myanmar project, what's that about?
So we're trying to help the farmers basically go from just producing crops that they use themselves to actually having some cash crops and building some resilience, and especially in crops that they may not be that familiar with. So we're currently working quite a lot with the onion growers because it's a nice cash crop for them. So we just produced a field guide for them, which is just a booklet to help them when the agronomists come out. They can sit and go through it so they can identify the pests and diseases, nice big pictures, and a bit of like, okay, why is this going to be an issue? What can you do about it? What do we recommend? How do we keep you safe? So just to try to educate them. And we are working on an e-course for the field advisors, and it's all about, so where are your gaps and how can we help? So I'm working on this with Suni, who is a pathologist, and so we simply try to say, okay, well, if you need help in this aspect, we will find some specialists and we'll help you with that.
So you can't go there at the moment, or have you never been able to go there?
Never been able to go. The coup, I can't remember what year it was, but it was literally at the start of the project, and it was made very clear that it's simply too dangerous. We were hoping last year it looked like some of the provinces was actually going to be open up, but it's gone very downhill again, unfortunately.
It must be a unique challenge to try and communicate best practice and hear stories from both sides just purely over Zoom or video conferencing, right? So how have you kind of found ways to try and work around that and try and make sure that communication is enabled both ways?
Yeah, we do have a lot of meetings and we have a lot of like face-to-face. They're very good at communicating with us. The main problem is actually then they don't have internet access because it's been shut off, right? Or we have to be very careful what we say, which is a bit unusual to say the least. But they've been like in in-country partnership that we have is with an outfit called Proximity, and they are really, really good. Like, they're very good at keeping us informed and helping, and yeah, it's just challenging. It would be nice if we could go and see firsthand, because sometimes we get it wrong. So currently we're reviewing the guide. We want feedback on it because we're a bit concerned that we want the research to be real, right? So we wanted to get it right before we move on to the next crop, which are chilies, which is another crop that they're wanting to get, better at and produce more of. And we just need to feedback. So we didn't miscommunicate, because initially we thought they wanted an app, and then we were kind of starting to look into that, and then we were told, oh no, don't do it an app because there's no coverage. So they said, don't do that. We need a paper copy. And I was like, oh, okay. So we'll do something different.
That's really cool. Do you prefer personally onions or chilies?
Onions. I'm not a spicy. I'm Danish. Our idea of spices is salt and pepper. I've lived for probably a year with the only spice in my cupboard was salt. And people were like, how can you even get away? I said, I don't know. I'm not a good cook. And B, that's our idea of a spice. That's how I grew up.
That's hilarious. Well, I'm English, so I mean,
yeah, salt
it's not much better in that part of the world.
Yeah, it's like curry paste.
This is a competition, yeah. I'd like to step back a little bit. I think we might have skipped over it. So, when did you come to New Zealand? So, that must have been a major point to decide to come over to the other side of the world, right?
Yeah, people say to me, ooh, that was brave to immigrate. The sad thing is I didn't really think about it much. So yeah, I guess it was brave, but at that age, right, you just go for it. Where today, if I had to immigrate somewhere, I'm sure there would be a spreadsheet and pros and cons and 700 decisions made. But I grew up on an island. When I was quite young, my mom got sick, so it kind of tainted, everything just kind of imploded in my life. And while I moved to Copenhagen to go to university and loved my time there, I never quite felt at home. And I thought at university, I was like, I really want to go and study at another university if that's an opportunity, and you could come to New Zealand on a scholarship. So I applied for that and was lucky enough to be awarded one. So I came here to do a semester as part of my master's at Lincoln University. And I left on New Year's Day, I think it was in 2003. And then I was only supposed to be here for 5 months. Cried all the way home on the plane. Didn't want to leave. And I thought, okay, how can I get back to New Zealand? And that's when I thought, okay, here you can actually get a job like a technician or something on your bachelor, which I already had. And I said, let's see if I can come back, do a year's experience, if nothing else, which would also be nice that you have a bit of actual practical experience, because I found the more I got into my university degree, the more I questioned whether or not I could actually fulfill a job once I had all this theoretical knowledge, but I never been in a greenhouse. I'm like, how does that? So I thought, let's get some actual practical knowledge. And so I came back here. But yeah, so 2003 was my first experience with New Zealand, which was all positive.
What were you thinking about when you were going back on the plane? Like, what kind of was in your mind that drew you back?
I don't know quite how to describe it, but when we came here, after 3 days, I felt like this is where I belong. Like, it was just everything about it. It was very low-paced, I found. People were incredibly friendly, which I don't know if you've been to Denmark, but I find us, like most people say that we're super friendly and happy, I find us quite rude and short. And I've had confirmation of people who, like when my brother and stuff were here, they said the same thing. Oh my God, these people are so friendly. They go out of their way to be nice and stuff. And it was a bit like went back to Denmark. It was a bit like a slap in the face. And I also felt back in Denmark, if you are not Volvo, white picket fence and 3 children and everything is in the high performance lane, you're literally underperforming in your life. That was kind of how I felt. Like you either go this way or you are frowned upon. Where here I felt like you could have 2 people living next door. One does that, right? Work very long hours, good education and all that. And next door there could be somebody who has no drive for that and just want to spend time pursuing their sport or hiking And they are completely happy with, nobody looks down. And it was just such a different mindset, I thought. And then, being outside and the beauty of the country was just, Denmark is beautiful. When you get the right day on a sunny day in the summertime, it's fairy tale, right? Absolutely love going back there. But when it's rained for 2 months non-stop and you've never seen the sun, we never got that here, right? So, yeah, there's a lot to like about New Zealand.
There's a big contrast between those two places with like how connected you are with the rest of the world. So coming here can be seen as being a bit isolated from everything else that is going on. So Did you feel that?
I've heard that part of the teen suicide issue in New Zealand is that they feel isolated from, and that there's nowhere to go. And I never ever felt that. I guess for me it was like, well, it's a plane jump home, right? If I want to go somewhere, I think maybe if you're very lacking in resources, maybe you would feel extremely trapped here. I don't know, but I love the fact that when I go to the US, they still think that we're either state of Australia or the capital of Australia. I've been asked once. And it's like nobody knows where we are. And especially like today with what's going on in the world, I quite appreciate that nobody else seems to quite know where we are, what we do. And we get on with life here.
Well, it's great to have you here in New Zealand. And I'm glad it's made such a connection for you as it has with many of us. Yeah. What did you study in your master's and your PhD?
Was it because I was here for my master's and worked here? So I worked under Dr. David Toulon when I was here. He was our group leader at the time. I started out, the first 3 months I worked here, all I did basically was sort thrips out of suction traps. So I spent an awful lot of time at the microscope and started doing other things, but that was literally my main job. And then when I'd done that, I had to mount them all. So there was months on that. And after that, I had to ID them all. So I got quite a connection with thrips. And so when I did my master thesis, it was on thrips and looking at two species, or a species that we have here that has kind of like a sibling species. And then I went to work for plant and food and crop and food, and then I started my PhD, and my PhD was on thrips again, but understanding how abiotic and biotic factors kind of influence how they perceive smells and how we can manipulate them, basically.
So is thrips like a passion project throughout your whole life, or was it kind of more Stockholm Syndrome at this point?
No, it's been quite a strong line from my almost first year of university with that zoology, where we had to sit and pick them out, to my work today. And first of all, I think they're incredibly beautiful. If you can't see beauty in nature, you should see something like that small, that lives for about 40 days if it's lucky, on a slide, and see the details and the beauty of this individual is just mind-boggling. But also they are just incredible pests. Like every cropping system seems to have them in there, and they are so destructive and they're so hard to deal with. And I feel, because I have all this knowledge in this field, it's almost my duty to do anything I can to help growers combat them in any way they can.
So what does the invasion landscape look like? Is there like lots of specialist thrips that target very specific crops that you're worried about? Or is there like generalist thrips that are really good at invading overseas that aren't here yet and they're, threatening on the border?
So we got a bit of everything. So for example, the New Zealand flower thrips, which is a New Zealand endemic species, is very targeted to the stone fruits and stuff. So that's, they go on other things, but I'm not so sure you would consider them a major pest on these. They just seem to be there, right? And then we have, for example, Western flower thrips, which is on lots of crops. And it's very invasive. It's very good at building up pesticide resistance. Everybody, has problem with it. So we get the whole breadth of the problematic that they can give the growers inside, outside. Yeah, they even get into fire alarms and set them off. So why not? Make it a household pest.
Are there some certain species of thrips that are overseas that are have threatened to come into New Zealand that have tried to establish and then been pushed back by biocontrol processes here in New Zealand?
We do get some. So we have a couple, for example, that we have 1 or 2 records of, like they actually been collected but never seen since. And we think it's just they probably just couldn't really establish here, which is great. I will say those don't seem to have the biggest pest status. One is, for example, from Australia, and it might have been introduced even more than once on winds coming in, but maybe our climate is just not supporting it. But there's always somebody knocking on our door. So, for example, we just did a paper with a colleague from Colombia that we're about to publish on a thrip species that they have in their greenhouses on flowers. And when we import flowers, it hitch along for the ride, right? Whether or not if it established, whether or not it's going to be a major pest, but it's definitely intercepted, and it's intercepted in a lot of places, right? So yeah, we don't want to even try it. So we work a lot on another thrip species at the moment that we didn't get till 2002, I think it was recorded, and to see how over the last 20 years it's gone from being restricted in a very small area around like Auckland, kind of top of Waikato, to now we're having an issue in strawberries in Timaru. It's a bit frightening. It's really starting, it seems, to ramp up its impact.
So in their native range, what ecological niche do they provide? And then what is enabling their expansion in New Zealand?
So, for example, in Tonsa, Franklin Island Tonsa that we got in 2002, it has a massive host range, like well past the 200 species, right? So it can use anything to survive. It can use lots of different crops to breed on. And I'm talking from lucerne to, a rose bush. So it's just incredible. Then on top of it, they love hiding in crevices. So if you spray for it, right, which, if you sit out, it's probably going to kill it, but they are hiding away in a place where it's very hard to get to. So now you have that. They don't need to mate to reproduce. So all they do is lay eggs, provide basically a male, mate with the male, and then we're off again. So if that happens, insecticide resistance can come up real quick in these species. And then they can get blown on winds. They're hard to find in biosecurity, you have to detect it, right? They're so small, especially if they're not moving, it's really hard to spot them. Some of them are beneficials, like some of them live on mosses or dead wood. Some of them prey on like eggs and other small insect. Some of them may provide some kind of pollination role. And so out of like in New Zealand, right, we got hundreds of species, and we're talking about a handful, maybe a dozen that are actually considered pests. So, but they are really punching above their weight. Those, let's say 10, 12 species, they are really, really pushing it when it comes to being a pest.
That's fantastic. The diversity and breadth of the species of thrips sounds pretty amazing.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah. With those ones that are a problem, what have been the most fruitful avenues, or what do you think are the most fruitful avenues in the future for being able to reduce their impact on the farming ecosystems in New Zealand?
Yeah. So biocontrol is obviously one of the things we're really trying to do better. And there are quite a number of predators that will do a great job. Unfortunately, all the predators, for example, we have in New Zealand, they only target basically the very first larvae stage when they're super young and small. So if you have adults flying in, currently we don't really have anything to do for them. So we are very much hoping that in the future we will get some more, like for example, Aureus, which is a pirate bug. They can actually eat the adults. They are big enough and strong enough to actually grab an adult and eat it, or do something with entomoparasitogenic fungi that you can spray out and they infest the adults. So that is really quite a linchpin for us, that we can get something that gets the adults, because we're doing an okay job actually mopping up the younger ones, especially when they're in the plants or even in the soil. They drop down into the soil to pupate, but we even got mites or nematodes that can go in there and take them. But the adults are very much the problem. And because they are so prolific, and so abundant around. It doesn't take much. If somebody mows his lucerne field, right, the poor greenhouse grower, a kilometer down the road, he's just going to get them through the vent. They're just going to come in. So we either have to avoid them coming in through the vent altogether, or we need to have better and more biocontrol, which is a huge problem in New Zealand simply because we just don't have that many products to use.
I'm very interested about the term pirate bugs. Why are they called pirate bugs?
I don't know. Don't ask me that.
Do they look like Johnny Depp? Do they come flying across?
They are quite broad-shouldered. Maybe that's what...
Where are they from?
I don't actually know. I mean, we have a couple of species, and some of them, aureus in particular, have been, like, not just here, but around the world, is actually manufactured and released for biocontrol. And we do have one here. It seems to be a bit spoiled, though, the one we have. It has a tendency to not like some crops, and then it just buggers off. And are not very effective. And you really, once you release them, you really want it to say, ooh, this is nice. I'm going to stay here and do my thing and eat, and not just bugger off to something else. I don't know actually where the term pirate bug came from.
Yeah, well, maybe they're from the Caribbean. That'd be quite a nice movie tie-in, I think.
That would be nice.
So we talked about your transition into the PhD. From there, was that a transition straight into working permanently for Plant and Food, or was there like a postdoc snugged in there as well?
I handed in on a Friday and I went back to work on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
So it was this PhD kept coming up kind of every year for a couple of years, and eventually I said yes to doing it, but that was literally just like, I still was doing some work with the entomology team, but I sat in my office, I stayed here at Plant and Food. I was obviously enrolled at Lincoln University for it, but I never had an office over there. So it was literally just a 3-year gap in my work here, and handed in, went back to work. Not like most people had done it. I would have liked a nice break after that, I'll say that, but...
Yes, the PhD can somewhat be a traumatic experience. And having a weekend to recover mentally after that can be quite tricky. So you've had a chance to digest that process at some point. Yeah. No, it was, to be supported to do this via Plant and Food was absolutely amazing, because, you would have access to people that at the university I just didn't think I would have had. It was sometimes a bit, if we were under the pump with other work, right, I would have to step in, but it was fine. And I think because I already had so much experience within the field, a lot of people kind of have to come to grips with even dealing with these insects, right? They are tricky. They are so tiny. And while they're a pest and hard to kill, as soon as you want them to live and give them every condition they could possibly want, they are like, oh, it's too hot. Oh, it's too moist. Oh, now it's Saturday. I'm going to just die on you. But because I worked on them for so many years, I didn't have any of those little hiccups, right? So it flowed pretty well, I thought. And I know some people, apparently, they do their PhD and they never want to work in that field again. And they're absolutely just completely over the subject. And some of them leave science, never want to go back to that. I never, ever, never felt like that. Never. It was very enjoyable. As previously in life, did you find another mentor or charismatic person that you kind of looked up to during that period?
So I've been very lucky with David Toulon. He was my first boss, and he's very passionate about thrips as well. I don't know if that rubbed off on me, but I've been incredibly lucky to be involved in quite a number of projects with him. He's an amazing scientist, and really want things done right and done well. And I don't think I actually quite realized what a privilege it is, and even just doing a PhD in a country like New Zealand and having good supervisors at Lincoln University, until I was awarded a trip to Japan to meet Nobel laureates. So they invited 100 PhD from Asia Pacific to come to Japan, and we could meet the Nobel laureates and stuff. And obviously you got to meet a bunch of PhD from other countries. Some of them would not have seen their supervisor for a year. One person was about to hand in his thesis. It's never been read. And all of a sudden I thought, Jesus, all this, you could always, especially with the technical part, David was always there to lend an ear and an opinion, and yeah, absolutely amazing. So, and like I said, we're currently writing a paper. We just published a book chapter together. Yeah, I feel very privileged to have had him mentor me.
What's the book chapter? You can plug it.
So it's a New Zealand book. And it's about biocontrol, and David was asked by Trevor Jackson, who was the editor on there, to provide a chapter on, it's basically a miniaturization, so thrips are so tiny, right? And when you have to shrink to that size, there might be some things like, for example, how they smell things on the antennae. Once it gets to that size, how is that affecting things like, for example, finding your prey, and how can we use that knowledge in regards to how biocontrol agents need to find their prey and stuff? Because they are no bigger. Well, not the mice we work on anyway. I see it advertised, so it must be coming up available soon.
If you were to go back to when you very first started and would give some advice to your younger self, what would you give her?
You know how parents and others say, oh, follow your dreams and your job will not feel like a job kind of thing. Now, I'm not so sure I think that's the best advice, but I will say this, I never thought I would end up doing this. And I think if you go with just anything that you see a meaning in, you will end up being passionate about it, because I see the difference we can make to the growers, right? And I love working for a CRI where your job is to help New Zealand farmers, right? And the primary industry. I love that fact about it. I always thought, I could go and work for potentially a chemical company, but in my opinion, I would consider that selling out. I feel that a lot of what drives my work is that we can help, hopefully, deal with these pests. And so, I would probably say don't worry so much. Planet Food was asked to have a stall at Canterbury University for career day kind of thing. I went there with our HR manager at the time, and it was really great. But I got asked by I don't know how many to say, I didn't take statistics in my third year. Do you think I'll still be able to get a job? Or I didn't take this course. Do you think I will still be able to get a job? I was a bit like, oh my God. They were so worried that they had not done something, and now they was going to follow them for the rest of their lives. And I was like, wow, I didn't think about that when I did mine, simply because the Danish system, you don't get much choice. The first year, I think I could choose one other subject, but it is very prescribed. If you wanted to get an agronomy degree, this is what you'll be doing for the next coming years. And you cannot choose to do Spanish or something like that. You don't get any credit for it. So that is simply not an option. They seem to have gotten a wee bit lost, tried to find their way, and then taken things that were a bit outside their field. And they were super worried about that. But I see the people that we hire, right? Some of them have had very little entomology, right? But they're so strong, they're so passionate that we can see the potential in them, right? And we're we can teach them the rest. It's fine, And maybe don't worry so much, It's going to be all right.
Is there a tension with these beautiful thrips and also looking for ways to try and control them? Is there any ever these things are so beautiful that you don't want to do that, or are they just in the wrong place and you're
they're just in the wrong place, unfortunately. But they're not. The ones that, the majority of the ones we have in New Zealand, especially the ones that are just in New Zealand, they're not pests, right? It's great. That's, it's the very few that makes it sound like when you say thrips, people go, oh no, but it's a very few that's making that, reaction. And unfortunately, because they are such issues, we definitely have to do something about. They can. If they send in, for example, a virus in an onion field, they can literally wipe out 80% like that. That is not acceptable. And that's just, we're talking about food security. And, we don't want people to run out of oven chips or not be able to go to the fish and chip shop on Friday night because we've had so much Liberia-Bacter in our potatoes that we have no crop to sell, right? That is not We don't want that. So
it could threaten the Kiwi identity of fish and chips on a Friday
yeah,
night.
you might end up with, well, we're going to say kumara chips, but that might be just as, which are my favorites. But yeah, you'll end up with parsnip or something like that. We don't want people to have to change their diet
we don't
like
want parsnip
that.
and fish, do we?
No.
It's not
So
good.
while we think they're incredibly beautiful and we, enjoy all their little kinks and quirks, yeah, the public, I don't think they don't see it that way, unfortunately. Which is fine. I can understand that.
So thank you, Mette, so much for being here and hearing about your journey in science and all the wisdom and tips and thrips you've had along the way. It's been amazing and a very enjoyable conversation. And I look forward to hearing what you do next.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you out there for listening. If you want to hear more of our podcasts, please check out our SciGest podcast page or subscribe to our channel on iTunes or your favourite podcast provider. And don't forget to post a review and rate this podcast. Ma tiwa, farewell. Until next time.